Hey, it's True North, and as promised, I watched that vid that Diane sent me. Oh boy. Well, the vid is a collection of 52 questions. Now, whether they're actually questions or statements that have a question mark at the end is a subject of debate, I'm sure. I'm taking a look through. I transcribed all the questions in the vid, so you're lucky. I'm going to post it all on the side so you can see it all together, all at once, and realize just how stupid this thing was. Okay. Let's see. Questions 1 through 9. We'll just tackle those first. Why did the authorities take so long to arrive? Why didn't they enter first? Why did they let the neighbor enter? Why didn't they say the neighbor was a suspect? How did they know there wasn't a gun-wielding murderer inside? Why did they rush to judgment? Why were the bodies moved before the district attorney arrived? And why did the authorities hold a press conference? Well, we'll just tackle 1 to 8 first. 9's part of the next batch. Okay. Alright, it wasn't an emergency call. No one knew that they were dead yet, so they weren't going to show up right away. Again, it wasn't an emergency, so they wouldn't barge in first. The neighbor had a key. Neighbor went in first. Oh well. They did not know the neighbor would come to harm because it wasn't an emergency call yet. Okay. Again, by that same reasoning, they would not know that there would be a gun-wielding murderer inside because it wasn't an emergency call. And based on the initial observations, it was a murder-suicide. Now, these are all standard police procedures. The bodies may have been moved before the district attorney arrived because the district attorney is handed evidence after the crime scene investigations unit collects the data. Okay, 9 through 15. Authorities holding a press conference despite being ill-prepared. That's an opinion, not a question. The lieutenant who was running the press conference, as per standard police procedure, would not go into whether there was any motives or not, because that would not have been the appropriate time. Then the next 3 questions deal with the locations of the bodies of Chris and Nancy changing 3 times, and the means of Daniel's death changing 3 times. Read the police report for the locations. I'm sure there's only going to be 1 location for Chris and Nancy, and the chokehold, well, that's based on the coroner's report, and the initial observations may not match what the coroner says. Pretty standard. The bodies were in 3 separate rooms because, well, okay, so he killed Nancy in one room, Daniel in another, and himself in yet another. Can't read the mind of a dead man. Okay, and is the number 3 significant in this? No. Enough said. Okay, 16 through 20. Okay, the changing of the story about Daniel's death. Well, again, I've already addressed that one. Okay, the DA states he had not seen the Bibles. Well, there are probably thousands of photos from the crime scene, so he may not have gotten to that point yet. Let's see. The change in time of Daniel's death, well, as the coroner would have done his examination, that may have changed as well as new information came in. Okay, where'd the 10 empty beer cans and half-empty bottle of wine come from? Who knows, maybe Benoit drank it a few days earlier and pissed it out of his system. And Nancy also did have alcohol in her system. Okay. And Benoit was known to be a non-drinker and only once in his life consumed a whole beer. Bullshit. I think it's pretty obvious by the fact that he's got alcohol in his house that he probably did not just drink one beer. 21, 22, and 23. Why didn't the authorities conduct DNA testing, and why didn't they conduct forensics and fingerprint testing? And why haven't the authorities once said forensics, fingerprints, or DNA? Also cited is, if they did, where are the results? Read the reports. Okay, 24 and 25. There were no signs of forced entry. Why did the neighbor have a key? Why did the neighbor then run away to Boston? The neighbor was a trusted friend. Are you trying to say the neighbor killed him? Which is unlikely. Or the neighbor also probably took off to Boston right away because A, neighbor is not primary suspect, and B, the neighbor walked in on a double murder homicide and is probably a little rattled. Okay, where was Kevin Sullivan throughout the duration of this events, and why haven't the authorities questioned him? Well, he's not a prime suspect. He was in Atlanta, if I remember, or some other city. And who's to say the authorities did not question him? Again, read the report. Kevin Sullivan. He divorced Nancy 10 years prior, has since gotten remarried, and has a nice, happy, bouncing baby boy. The man is not a primary suspect. Daniel's fragile ex was reported by the lawyer for the WWE. His medical records did not back it up. Nancy may have been drinking. Chris may not have been drinking. And he may have drugged Nancy, so the amount of drugs in her bloodstream doesn't make a difference. Number 30. Yeah, people are in shock because Chris Benoit suddenly killed his wife. Yeah. So what if they were surprised that this happened? So would I be. Okay, 31 through 33. Text messages more than likely were sent from Chris. Just because you doubt it does not mean that someone else sent it. The authorities may not have got a psychiatrist looking into it because, well, he killed his family, so they likely were a cry from help. Not all suicides have suicide notes, and not finding a diary or apparently giving to the family, either they did or did not find it, or the family did or did not receive it. Make a point there. 34 through 38. All this speculation from a unnamed former LAPD detective. Just because there's no suicide note does not mean it was not suicide. The culprit who committed the Wikipedia entry was making a joke, did not realize it was true. It was based on internet speculation at the time. Just because he lived in Stamford, Connecticut does not mean he is connected to the WWE, and he already admitted that it was a joke. Number 42, you can't read the mind of a dead man. Same for number 43. 44 through 51. There was no signs of forced entry, no evidence that anyone else besides the Benoits had been in the house, and no reason why someone who does not practice professional wrestling would not be able to perform a chokehold. So, anyways, he's a wrestler. That's what he knows. Number 52. There is going to be no absolute 100% proof as you're looking for it. But based on a reasonable doubt, Chris Benoit is a killer.